With my today's guest, David Diaz from Protocol Labs, we will have more of a technical discussion, or a little bit more technical discussion than usual. We will get to know him and his career. He started as an engineer, so we will learn some of his projects, which are very interesting, and what brought him to blockchain. So I'm really looking forward to our today's talk. Welcome to Coffee from the Block from the House of Blockchain. My today's guest is David Diaz. He is Research Director at Protocol Labs. And it's a really big pleasure to have you here, David. I know originally you're from Portugal, which is one of my favorite countries, to be very honest. True?
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. And now you recently moved to our area, right?
That's correct. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here at the House of Blockchain in Liechtenstein. And I must say that I'm loving the area, the country, and also the people. And I'm really happy to get the chance to be part of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good to have you here. You already, we had a House of Blockchain. It was a crypto winter event, and you did a presentation there, and it was fascinating to see people from all over the place, and that you joined us as well from Portugal was really a big honor for us. But I would like to learn more about yourself, sure, and to share some of your backgrounds to the audience. Mm-hmm. And let's start with a very easy question, I think, but a very crucial one. How did you end up doing things in the blockchain space? What was your moment where you discovered blockchain?
That's a great question, and I'll be completely honest. So I've been part of this company, Protocol Labs, right? And so we are one of the pioneer companies in the blockchain space, and figuring out that you actually can use crypto beyond exchanges of value, but actually can attach that to computing. But before I joined this company 7 years ago, so it has been a long journey.
You started the Protocol Labs 7 years ago?
So 2015, almost 7 years in May next year. So almost really close to 7 years. But I was already contributing to some of Protocol Labs projects in the open source ecosystem, right? So
back then you lived in Lisbon.
Well, I did live in Lisbon, but the reality is my professional career path is a little bit different from the usual, and I don't want to say that in a cliche way. I mean,
is there a usual way how to actually end up in the blockchain space?
That's a good point. That's a good point. But the reality is I've been very close to everything that was happening on web development, right? So I organized multiple conferences in Lisbon, not only, also in London and in San Francisco for web and for container technologies. I was working from Lisbon for American companies, first doing consulting of software development, but also security pen testing and WebRTC. And WebRTC is this protocol that people use nowadays to build video chat apps on the browser, right? It enables you to do, if you use Jitsi, for example, they use WebRTC in the backend in order for you to create a peer-to-peer communication to connect to other browsers and have that video call.
So it's almost 2 years now. Everybody almost everybody is using somehow WebRTC.
That's true. It has grown tremendously. And so before I joined Protocol Labs, what I was doing was these conferences, working for these American companies, and I was also doing a master's in peer-to-peer networking.
So you're a coder by training, or?
That's true. So I'm a networks engineer by training. And I guess an entrepreneur by heart, and an event organizer by passion, and I just try to wear these multiple hats ultimately to get closer to the communities that I'm really passionate about. And what I was building back then was a computing platform where I used the browser as the universal runtime, because you have your browser on your phone, or your desktop, or your tablet. And there's a lot of computing potential that exists on these devices that is not used, right? Often we say, our phone has more computing power than the computers that were used to put the man on the moon, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of latent potential here. And so I was really passionate about making use of that potential, and also really fascinated by community networks. So community networks, I'm not sure if everyone is familiar, but it is essentially people creating alternative internet infrastructure out of commodity hardware. So the switches that they have at home, the computers that they were going to throw to trash, and connecting them from village to village and creating an alternative internet that it is not connected or can be connected, but ideally not connected to the telecoms of the world. So it's kind of like when you connect, you are part of this other parallel universe. Like these community networks have existed maybe for 15, 20 years. Yeah. And like Spain has a huge one with 32,000 nodes from the last time I checked. Germany also has a big one, Freifunk. If you go to Berlin, you will see Freifunk on your Wi-Fi devices. And if you connect to that, you're connecting to this alternative internet, which has its own services and like its own data sharing platforms, communication platforms, and so on. And so what I was fascinated was like, hey, like there is already people that are interested on sharing the computing resources to provide services to others. Mm-hmm. There's areas of the world that suddenly sadly, there is no like infrastructure deployed by companies because there is no market there yet. So there needs to be alternative infrastructure deployed for those areas. And so, for example, in Greece, for many years, some of the islands had better internet thanks to the community deployments than the actual telecoms. Eventually, that changed with 4G and 5G because it make it very cheap. But when it was about laying out cable, like it was easier to use the alternative one. So I was like very into this movement, very into these communities, was building this computing platform for the browser. This is a time where WebRTC is very nascent. WebAssembly, which is this technology that enables you to have very performant code running on the browser, didn't exist. There was like a thing that you could compile like the C programming language to a subset of JavaScript, and people were showing that you could have games like Unreal Engine, so like a very professional gaming engine on the browser. And I was trying to push the world into understanding like, hey, like what if we use the web platform as the universal runtime, where we distribute jobs across all the machines, and we leverage the voluntary community networks, the voluntary resources that people put available.
So put that in my words.
Yeah.
Maybe
Please.
It's a little bit easier to understand, but correct me if I'm wrong. So back then, what you were working on is actually using the existing browser technology we already use every day.
Correct.
So you use it to serve the web, right?
Yeah.
And you said that software is so powerful that you can use it for a lot of other things actually. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, what was one of the key factors is that you were using the computing power of the devices which were anyway there to provide new services and products. Mm-hmm. So that was actually the main idea back then. Exactly.
And as I said, like completely honest, when I discovered IPFS, which was this first product,
IPFS, that's
the Interplanetary File System, like the first protocol that Protocol Labs develops or the prototypes.
You installed that on my browser.
That's true.
When we were in Lisbon.
That's true. So now you are part of the network.
I am.
And so when I discovered that new idea of like this peer-to-peer protocol that merged the best concepts from BitTorrent and Git as data structures, but maybe let's not go super deep on that. Mm-hmm. Like what IPFS enabled was like for machines to connect and create this resilient fabric for information to flow from user to user without having to access to a cloud, right? Like without you having to talk with a gateway, with a bottleneck effectively. And as I was doing computing,
so that would also allow like some kind of censorship resistance, right?
That is true. And so one of the big features of IPFS, and one of the things that it brings that the Web 2 world didn't offer, is
maybe explain a little bit. I mean, everybody's talking about Web 1, Web 2.0, and now a lot of people are talking about Web 3.0.
Yeah.
So what are, like, just in a nutshell, very easy, what are the differences?
That's a great question, and like I think if you ask different people, you'll get different answers.
So there's no answer to no.
It's still getting shaped. So like the moment in history where we are right now is kind of like late 90s, right? Mm-hmm. Like the browser had appeared, there was Netscape Navigator, like Microsoft was figuring out that the web was going to be the next big thing, not the TV on people's living rooms, right? And so people were still discovering how to do like apps, right? Like back then, the web was the web 1.0, the read web. Yeah. And when we got to the web 2.0 was the read plus write web. So now you could interact. You could like both consume information, but also publish information. And
so web 1.0 was, I have a website, I was searching for content.
Yes.
I was not interacting, I was not providing my own content or interacting with the app.
Exactly. And like there is this amazing keynotes like from multiple technologies, one of them Steve Jobs, like one of the Apple keynotes, that is demoing an app of like booking a flight. It's like, look at this marvelous technology of booking a flight, and nowadays
everybody's using it everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Nowadays, like obvious. But like one of the problems with the Web 2.0 is like ultimately relies on centralized points, right? And so if the gateway either goes down for some technical failure, and we have seen that happen even this year many times, like even Facebook that has like one of the most sophisticated infrastructure deployments went down, or if the gateway, the gateway keeper disagrees with you, it can exclude you from the network, right? You can be censored. This is where you touch censorship, right? And so this happens both at the company level, where effectively what we enabled with Web 2.0 world is this kind of new feudalism for the internet, where you have like these lords that control like who gets in, like they control the permissions, and if they disagree with you, or if you misbehave given their own policies, you can be excluded from the network, and that can be very nefarious. Like if you have to use a platform, let's say Airbnb, and like you use that platform to like rent some apartments, and like that's how you get your income to provide to your family. And if Airbnb for some reason disagrees with you for some reason, you get excluded and you lose the thing that pays for your costs, like the thing that provides
source of living,
source of living, exactly. And that's like not good, because like why would we give this power to companies that are for profit making, that have not the best interest of people in mind? They actually have the best interest of the shareholders, right? And so that is like very critical to think about. Another thing is governments are also abusing this power, right? And so we have seen throughout our lifetime, Egypt completely shutting down the internet and people not being able to connect with their loved ones, not knowing if they are okay or not. We have seen the Hong Kong protests, like that is even more recent, where like China was exerting power to make sure that people could not riot against its political decisions. And even worse, like very close to home, like Spain was censoring Catalonia when they wanted to have a referendum about independence. And like this Catalonia versus Spain has been going for 500 years. Like they always had this discussion, and like I think ultimately should be a healthy discussion. And of course there is a lot of background history, but like independently, like having a country that uses its power to control, that controls the infrastructure to censor and to cut out information from, so that people don't have the ability to access information, is very concerning. Like it's very concerning, like, and this is a country within the European Union, let alone the rest of the world.
That could happen like around the corner, that could is happening everywhere.
Exactly.
And so you were working actually on that. That was actually on an infrastructure level you were working on. Like it was software based, or still is software based, right? And
that's software based, yeah.
So you were working on the IPFS, and that's released now. Everybody can use it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So if we will put a short description or a link somewhere.
Oh, that'd be great.
In
Yeah,
the
fantastic.
Comments, if people want to understand a little bit more about IPFS, we will do that.
To download it, like they can also download the Brave browser, which already has IPFS. That's not what you got installed. But yeah, so like to answer your first question is, I was doing this computing platform. IPFS was the obvious data layer for me to run the computation into the nodes that have the data to run the computation there. So I started contributing to the project, and only after I joined the project and the community, I realized that there was even another layer, which is the incentivization layer. Actually, once you have people collaborating and sharing resources, can we reward them? Can we contribute? Can we pay them out for the service that they're providing to the network? And this is where
value again, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is where like the cryptocurrency aha moment came for me. And like I actually
do you remember when you had like the first time ever realized about cryptocurrencies? Do you know that? Because I don't have any like memory of that moment, of that specific moment, because I don't know exactly when it was. I was just, I know that it was during my time at the university in Vienna.
Oh, wow.
So it has to be 2010 or 11.
Yeah.
Normally I say it's 2011 because I'm pretty sure, because I finished my studies in March, and I knew that I did a lot of things with Bitcoin before that.
Yeah.
Did we have that moment, or do you know like half a year or a year exactly?
I guess like to my shame, like I made the same mistake as all the other academics, because I look at Bitcoin as like, oh, this is a super interesting distributed systems project. Let me understand the research here, let me understand the cryptography, but I didn't understand the economic and political transformation that it will eventually cause into the world. Yeah. And so I looked at it as a technology, not as like a changing force. It took me a few years to then realize, oh no, actually, I can now incentive align people to collaborate and to cooperate rather than being competitive. I get into this win and help win game rather than a zero-sum game. Yeah. And so maybe this is like late 2015, after I joined Portugal Labs fully, I finally had that how moment, like, okay, there is more than just like an interesting distributed systems project. This is actually how we are going to get a decentralized computing platform that people can use.
Yeah. I mean, when I started, I was also interested in technology because I was like, okay, now we have internet money without intermediaries. And I was like, how can you do that without operating servers which are centrally organized? So I was also very interested in the technology more than everything else. And then it took me some years also, to be very honest, to understand a little bit what's the big picture and what's behind that besides technology. Because people sometimes tell you that like blockchain is so hard to understand. I mean, it's not easy. Sure, it's not a 5-minute talk and you have like a big picture of blockchain. But I think it's not rocket science. I mean, it is possible to understand it if you read 1 or 2 books, I think. And then you have that big picture you should know to start to think about, or just to enter that space.
I agree. But like ultimately the question is like, what are those books, and like who is going to advise those books to you, right? And so that curation of information
do you have recommendation for a book?
Great question. Like right now there is a book that I really love and I've been recommending to a lot of people that is not necessarily crypto focused because it was published in 96, which is The Sovereign Individual. Okay. And but it reads as a book of prophecies because it describes this future where there will be something as cyber money. And that individuals will become like self-sovereign and like will travel around the world to the best jurisdictions, the best governments, that they give them the best deals. And now we see that happening actually. Like we have this whole digital.
First of all, we will share that link as well. Okay, we'll share that link. And people choose the best jurisdiction. Right? I mean, we both know that Lisbon is really beautiful and Portugal is really amazing, and I love the Portuguese people. There's no question about that. So it was, for me, I had a small question mark when you said, Thomas, I will move to that area. And you will see me more often in Vaduz. And I said, why?
No, that's a great.
It's a legit question.
Yeah,
right?
It's a totally valid question. As we were discussing, like ultimately there was like 2 reasons, right? One of them, very important, like my fiance has been doing this PhD in computational neuroscience at ETH Zurich.
Almost the most important reason. Right?
Exactly. Like it was the one that like led me to ask the question, hey, like should I actually move? And well, just to be completely transparent, like with Corona and the lockdowns, actually was getting very hard, like very cumbersome because borders were getting closed. We would need to be separated for a very long period of time. It was very, very annoying. And so it forced us to ask the question, should we just move all of our stuff into the same country for now, at least? And then the second reason, like ultimately that was a decision to move to Switzerland, but like then the decision that took me too close to Liechtenstein and like enables me to be present in Liechtenstein was realizing like what Liechtenstein is as a country, right? And so ultimately I'm a big believer that there needs to be these kind of like sandboxes, not only as countries, but also as platforms, as communities for people to join and engage and learn from. And Liechtenstein is this spectacular like, proto country where the people here are incredibly brilliant, really, really savvy. Like they really understand the economics, the politics of the world, and they are willing to give tries to like new structures, new corporate structures, new incentive structures, new regulatory structures to understand like what could be the next generation of governmental processes that can really enable either innovation or creation of value and so on. And as I was digging more and more about Liechtenstein, I started like finding a lot of patterns, a lot of things that really match the communities that I'm used to be part of, because I'm an open source and a web person. So I'm used to like permissionless, like collaborative, cooperative networks and participatory networks. And so Liechtenstein as a proto country and as like this sandbox for a lot of experimentation and a lot of ideation, and powered by these brilliant people that I describe as business law hackers, right? Like people that really understand like ultimately the system, and I can, while respecting the spirit of the law, like understand like what is the next version of the protocol, right? What is the next iteration? And there's like a few elements here that are really fascinating for someone that comes from open source and even from crypto networks, which goes from the direct democracy, where everything gets decided through referendum, like everyone gets to participate.
That's actually interesting because like we are monarchy, so Liechtenstein is a monarchy, and we have a princely family and a ruling prince, but we also have a parliament. So we have like these two powers, which are some kind of balance, right? And you have a lot of direct democracy elements in it as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and like a way to describe it, and like some crypto networks do that nowadays, where ultimately all the decisions are made by the participants, by the people, but then you have this selected group of people or selected individual that has a private key. That in case something goes off track, it can like just activate, rewrite the code, make sure that like that the spirit of the law, the spirit of the proposals gets respected, and it doesn't get destroyed by some poor implementation in the law or something. So that's very interesting.
And for me, that's somehow really interesting because in my daily work, I try to build the bridge between technology and law, right? So it's for me, it's really interesting that law and code is really very, very similar, right? It's the syntax you use and how you phrase things, and I think so. That's why it is rather compatible. But normally, like the techies, they don't talk to the lawyers, and the lawyers don't talk to the techies, right?
Yeah.
But I think we do almost the same things in a kind of a different way, right?
Yeah.
But it has similar concepts, actually.
I totally agree with that. And ultimately, it's about the friction and the barrier to entry, right? Like modern programmers do not touch the old systems, the COBOL systems that are still running inside banks. And that's because like the language is too foreign, too hard to understand, really complex. And ultimately, like business law and corporate law and like all sorts of law, human code, right, is not trivial. It's really hard to compute. It's really hard to process. Like it requires a lot of expertise and specialized expertise, right? It's typically for lawyers to operate
within... Don't disrupt the lawyer's business, please.
Well, I don't think it will be me, but I think that's already in process.
It's a matter of time. Everybody is affected by that. So.
Yeah, I think, but ultimately will create new opportunities. Yeah. And I guess like just finishing the Liechtenstein point, like another thing that is very important that Liechtenstein doesn't get enough praise for is this attitude towards like just recognizing that people might have better ideas and giving power to the villages to become independent countries if they want to do so. Like the right to self-proclamation of independence. And so if a village, if like a portion of the country disagrees with the direction of the country for some reason, they can effectively have a fork, right? And so for all the crypto folks, like this is like a very common term, not for the citizen of a country, but like this is exactly what it is. Like if you disagree with the direction of the leader of the open source project or disagree with the governance of the crypto network, you can always fork it, and same happens here. And so it just creates this responsibility and this accountability mechanism where a governor, like a group in power, cannot abuse that because they know that their people will just leave. Yeah. If they have the right to leave, if they don't agree and like if there is disagreement. So I think that's incredibly powerful.
And if they do their fork, they also have to implement the module TVTG, also known as the Blockchain Act.
That's true.
Right? Like they should use that library if they do the fork. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, just start with that.
Yeah, start with that.
Clean slate.
But speaking of the TVTG or the Blockchain Act, I mean, that's the Liechtenstein. I think it's a very comprehensive piece of legislation, and I sometimes call it it's like the enforcement layer. If you have like the blockchain layer is the transaction layer, and where you can have like layer one solutions. I think that the Blockchain Act and the legal framework we have in Liechtenstein allows you then to have, if needed, legally enforceable claims in the real world, right? It tries to build the bridge between the digital world and the real world. Did you like, where did you hear the first time from the Liechtenstein Blockchain Act? Was it in Liechtenstein or was it before?
Was before, but it was, I think, end of last year, early this year. And the way I ended up discovering all of this, you're not going to believe it, is I was looking for the best place to live now that I was moving to a new country. And then I'm in Google Maps and trying to like see different areas and different places. And I started noticing that there is like this tiny country that for some reason has the Crypto Country Association and then Bitcoin Swiss is always there, also there. And like this other like just crypto and house of blockchain. Like, what is this place? And I was like fascinated. I was like, oh, why are people going here? And then like you all start searching like Liechtenstein, crypto, blockchain, etc. And you start realizing, oh no, actually there is a blockchain act, and this has been approved for a couple of years now, since 2018, I believe, right?
Yeah,
and,
there was a publication was in March 2018. We had the first announcement. And then it was published in 2019 and enforced since 1st of January 2020.
1st of January 2020. Okay, so, but yeah, like the design was there. People were discussing it for a very long time. There was like multiple crypto projects coming here. And at that point, I was just fascinated. And then I had to understand like, who are these people? Why are they so interested in crypto? How can they like be such pioneers in this area? Like how can they like be trailblazing so much while everyone else is still trying to understand how crypto works, even all the other regulators, and like these folks already have the law in place. They already understand the relationships between the multiple actors. Like I was sending it to all my friends that they they should check it out and should really understand what is happening here.
I mean, it is amazing to have you here.
Yeah.
And I was speaking of that event at the House of Blockchain, and when I told people like, this is David, yes, he's working for Protocol Labs, and then you might have heard of another project he was looking for. And actually, you talked about that project as well, right? At the House of Blockchain event.
You mean the Filecoin?
Yes,
right.
That's the more well-known one, right?
Yeah, well, it's ultimately what is the persistence layer for IPFS, which is the data layer, right? Yeah. And so once you create these primitives, like these modules, like IPFS being one of them, Leap Peer-to-Peer, which is the networking stack that nowadays gets used by Ethereum 2, by Polkadot, by Agoric, and many others. Like you now need, if actors can interface with each other, if they can exchange value with each other, you need some kind of medium to register that exchange of value. And so Filecoin is ultimately a way for people to store other people's data and get paid for it, get rewarded for it.
So I'm the new cloud provider. I can actually provide cloud services, but in a decentralized way.
That's correct. And one of the technical terms that gets used is, instead of being a cloud, because it's on the sky, it's very far, it's the mist.
Okay. So we learned something today.
Hopefully. And so everyone can be a provider, everyone can provide service. And so what this creates, the simplest term to describe it is like, think of Airbnb that provides access, creates a market for latent capacity, which is people's houses and bedrooms and whatnot. But Airbnb is a central gatekeeper, they control who plays the game. In Filecoin, it's a completely open market. No one, not even us, have control like what deals get made. Like if you want to store your files in Liechtenstein, in Switzerland, in Portugal, in China, and in Taiwan, like you are the one requesting that service out of the network and paying for that service in the network. And then local entrepreneurs can use that because we use a bunch of cryptography to validate that this exchange of value is verified, that it's correct. And so you don't need terms of service. You don't need legal binding contracts because that is already enforced through the protocol itself.
And I don't have to be afraid that these guys are now using my data.
Well, you should be afraid in the same way that you should be afraid when you use Google Drive or Dropbox, and you should encrypt your data in your computer and upload it encrypted. Yeah. Like if you are trusting them to not look at your files, I'm sorry, but they are.
So that sounds like a good advice. Encrypt your data.
Yeah, always encrypt your data. The thread model is exactly the same. Of course, Filecoin gives you encryption on the wire, so no one can see which bits are passing, in the same way that you use HTTPS nowadays. But for 100% security, you should be controlling who has access, right? To this data through the cryptography. Yeah.
Because I know you now a bit, I think, and we already shared some time together. Yeah. And I learned a lot about you, and I think you're a very fascinating person. And one thing which is amazing about yourself is your energy. I mean, the way how you do things, and the speed how you do things, and you really get things done.
Well, I think we share a lot of that.
Thanks. We actually organized that event in 10 minutes here the last time on that sofa. Exactly. But if you how would you describe one of your standard typical work days? What are you doing if you want to share that?
No, I'm more than happy to. And And so for especially early in my career, I was like this productivity freak. I would read all the books, all the strategies. I would try everything from like inbox 0 to 43 folders to to-do lists to getting things done, all sorts of things. And I experimented a lot. And also with the amount of caffeine that I would take and kind of like a little bit of biohacking as well.
I have a question for you. The last question will be an interesting one.
Yeah, okay. I want to hear that one. And so I experimented a lot, and ultimately I found my rhythm. And because my role nowadays, like for a very long time, and like as I said, like I'm engineering by training, and entrepreneur by heart, and I would really like to make things, to build things, to be like in the room designing the blueprints that like will yield the system. But nowadays my role is a little bit more broad. Like I help labs. So as a research director of Portugal Labs, my role is actually to take the open problems, privacy preserving primitives, reader-writer privacy, scalability of a network, all these things that require new technology, and work with internal labs at Portugal Labs to find new solutions, to find new cryptography. And so it requires a lot of management. And so nowadays my day is divided in two blocks: maker time and manager time, with a break in the middle for some food and some exercise, hopefully. And so I'm very like the way I approach work, like I believe like discipline really gives you additional time. Like if you live in a world of like notifications and like if you are responding to every single notification, a lot of your potential gets diluted, destroyed just by that reactiveness. And so for me, it's very important. Like at the end of every day, I look at all my notes that I took throughout the day, and I create my to-do list for the next day. Like once I wake up, I know exactly what I need to do. And of course, while I sleep, things happen, but that's okay. Like if there is something that happened while I sleep that like requires me to change all my schedule for the day, someone will call me and tell me.
Maybe we have to do a separate talk about what were your times when you launched Filecoin, because
yes,
that's a separate talk.
Yeah, that is a different that is like a different approach to work. Like the way
but that's a separate talk. Like let's focus on your standard workday today.
Well, let's put it simply that way. That version was not sustainable.
Okay, I can imagine.
It got the job done.
I know the story.
It got the job done, but it was not sustainable for multiple years. And so, wake up, like I have all my notifications off, like all my chats off. I have my like some apps that help me.
You really like air gap yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I typically use this time to like 4 tasks that I need deep focus. And it can be from coding to designing some architecture piece to actually just reading a paper and really understanding what is the core essential bits of it, so that I can really page in all this context and I can learn it. And then after this break in the middle of the day, and so I typically like to wake up very early in the morning, like around 5 a.m. So when I would wake up, then I go, I do my commute to the kitchen.
5 a.m.?
It's 5 a.m., yeah. Then I do my commute to my kitchen, which is at exactly my 10 steps. And then I grind my coffee beans. This is like very, like not therapeutic, but it's a ritual of like starting the day.
But then you can already answer the last question. What's your favorite coffee then?
Okay, I'll answer.
Type of coffee, how you make coffee, which beans, like, or if you have a specific one, or.
Well, I do have a specific one, and actually I need to thank my friend Jeremy, which has been with me in this adventure at Portugal Labs. He joined as employee number 2, I joined as employee number 3, so I've been through all the adventures with him, like building the company. And he was the one I was already coffee addict, like I would already drink a lot of coffee as a Portuguese person, like we have to.
You have amazing coffee, that's for sure.
It's good, but like he got me into drinking coffee out of a Chemex. And
Chemex is, for the people who don't know that's like a filter.
It's a filter coffee with some specific filters that can capture the oils of the coffee. And so, and also because it's open, like it's not like you don't do filter coffee closed. Like you let the coffee bloom, so all the CO2 gets evaporated out into the air. And so it yields this coffee that is very soft and like there's no acidity on it. Makes it very tasty. And so I can drink like easily half a liter of that and not feel any reflux or any jittery and so on. And the type of bean that he got me to really like was the from Ethiopia, the Yirgacheffe. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Yirgacheffe, yeah. It's just like the smell and the taste, and once like. It's not the easiest to find. I find sometimes like I need to really to go to multiple coffee shops to see if they have some batches from Ethiopia from that region. But it's just like so tasty. What's yours?
I have a lot of actually
Of course.
favorite coffees, so to say, but I like Ethiopia region as well. Yekshef is one, but they have a lot of acidity, right? Normally, they
like I don't like with the Chemex. I don't.
you don't.
I don't experience it. Yeah.
I love Kenya as well. I love also like for sure. I mean, I actually love to try things, right?
Oh, yeah. Of
and
course.
I do like also really like acidity in the coffee because it gives you also the fruitiness.
Yes.
It comes with the fruitiness. But I yeah, it's actually as you know, I'm a coffee person. I love like the portafilter espresso, as well as the Chemex coffee. And recently I got as a present a cold brew station.
Oh,
so
okay.
for the next summer I'm going to be prepared for cold brew. But
excellent.
Thank you, but we have to finish your standard workday. So we started now. You have your to-dos ready. You have your coffee. You had your 10 steps to the kitchen to prepare your Chemex coffee. And what do you do then? You have like the two parts, as you said.
Yeah. So the make your time and manage your time. And actually, I have these blocks on my calendar. I'm very rigorous. I have like my sleep block, my make your time, so that people know not to book meetings unless it's very urgent. Of course, they have permission to, but like they know. And so. Like from 5 to noon, that's like when I get this like big block of like focus time. Well, you know, like waking up, stretching, like drinking, making the coffee, you get roughly like 6 hours of solid work, which makes me very happy. Like by noon, I'm already very happy with all the productivity I got out of my workday, which then I have my break for lunch and exercise. And then like around 2:30, 3 is when like the meetings start. Because also the teams that I've been working with since forever, are always very international, and not only international. I never work in a company with an actual schedule. Like people like can work whenever they want. So I'm used to like have meetings until late, until like 8 or 9, and then have food again, dinner, and rinse and repeat.
Blockchain people are not like. I mean, I don't know if you consider yourself a typical person in the blockchain space, but that's what I experience. I know a lot of people in the blockchain space which really work very, very hard, but they love what they do. I mean, it looks like as far as I experience yourself, you really like what you do. I mean, it actually feels like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like working hard, like that's not even a question. Like throughout all my entire career, crypto or not, right? Like it has been always about making like something that I'm passionate about, and that I get to work with really amazing people, right? Like I work very well in an environment where people are really excited to make something happen. I work very poorly in an environment where people are more toxic, as I guess any other human, right? And so if my peers are just as excited as I am to get stuff done, I'm no problem going the extra length, like whatever it's necessary, and really try to be as versatile. Like there is no challenge. That's what, like I have this title like research director, but like effectively I could be anything. Like if it's an event that needs to be organized, I'm an event organizer. If it's code that needs to be written, I'm the engineer. If it's I don't know, like doing like a campaign, like launching a blog post, now I'm a writer. Like if I need to like dabble on design, and like okay, I'm not a great designer, I'm not trying to say that, but like I can also like just bring the tools up and just get something done. And like in the end, it's about getting stuff done. And I really care about innovation, right? And so I do see crypto as a catalyst for innovation, because it's giving us new primitives to collaborate as humans, right? And so it's giving us like this trustless fabric that we can trust to exchange value. It gives us like a verifiability layer that we can use to correctly check if that exchange of value was indeed the thing that was intended. It gives us an ability to experiment with new governance mechanisms, right? And we see this huge revolution happening in crypto with DeFi and DAOs, the decentralized autonomous organizations, which is a beautiful sandbox for people to actually appreciate governance.
We will anyway have a talk about DAOs as soon as we have the Liechtenstein proposal for co-DAOs ready. I have one question, or that's actually my final question, and I don't know if you want to share that. In Lisbon, I heard that there's a very famous place. It's called Protocol Labs Meat Palace. And it's amazing because the meat there is amazing. Yeah. I don't know if you want to share, but maybe what should I do if I'm in Lisbon and I try to get in contact with you or some of your team and to experience the Protocol Labs Meat Palace experience?
Well, if you are in Lisbon, please do let me know. I might just fly to meet you there.
Great. There was an open invitation, so please try to contact David.
No, like and people do that. Like that's actually the story of the Protocol Labs Meat Palace, because there is this beautiful, like amazing restaurant in an old Arabic palace that was transformed to an embassy, and now it's kind of like this boutique shop and like multiple like fine restaurants. And one of them is this amazing like kind of like butcher, like barbecue meat, delicious meat place that has both the interior area inside the palace and the garden area. And I happened to take my team there, and they loved it so much that an event that was supposed to take 1 week became a 1 month, and we went there every week. And then the actual name, the Protocol Labs Meat Palace, happened when someone from the IPFS community called me that I didn't met that. So someone had found my number to ask me not about IPFS, but of course it was part of IPFS, to ask me about this Protocol Labs Meat Palace that I has heard so much. And so at that point, it became the Protocol Labs Meat Palace. And now when people go to Lisbon, like it becomes, it's a staple. Like everyone needs to go to the Protocol Labs Meat Palace and have delicious food and a good wine
and experience Portuguese hospitality. Yeah, beautiful. I had Jan already to experience that, so that's why I was asking. Yeah, it was great fun. Thank you very much, David, for stopping by. And I'm looking forward to our next talk about the CoDAO. And we will add all of the links down in the comment section. If you have any questions for David, please comment and we will forward it, or maybe David will answer directly. You can also subscribe to our channel.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I feel like if we had 10 more hours, we would have topics to fill it in.
3 other events.
Exactly.
And some other ideas.